Meet Reid Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reid is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reid.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Reid Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio, KGAB AM, 650 on your dial, Cheyenne, and the Intermountain West, serviced by the Town Square Network, and KFEZ FM, serving southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. Howdy, folks. You know, we've been talking the last few weeks with Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers and Ted Nugent and others on gun control, constitutionality, etc. And I thought it would be really interesting. First of all, the chaos in the Mideast continues unabated. The attacks and dangers to Israel, one of our staunchest allies, continues unabated, and it's kind of getting lost in the gun control drone here. It's getting lost in the debt and diversionary tactics of both administration and Congress, debt ceiling, deficit, credit rating, all that stuff. But there is the rest of the world out there. And the rest of the world, because we're so interconnected anymore, has a tremendous effect on us. And today, I have with us Dr. Tawfik Hamid. And, Tawfik, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, number one. Tawfik is a medical doctor. He's an expert on the Mideast and radical Islam. And I think it's something that I want to bring back to your attention. And I think Tawfik's going to draw some really interesting comparisons between life in the United States, life in the Mideast, how the two are related, what we're doing wrong, what we ought to be doing, which we probably won't do. And, how some of these things like gun control are handled in the Mideast. It might be an instructive lesson for us here. So, Tawfik, let's start off on a really big picture basis, because I want people kind of acquainted with the big picture, and then we're going to get into some specifics on Egyptian society, the Muslin Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and Egypt, and the Middle East relative to Israel, and how Israel is used as a diversion, and a whole bunch of other topics. And by the way, I want to tell you, folks, Tawfik has written a terrific book, and it's called Inside Jihad. You can get it at Amazon. That's your number one source. You can also order it from your local Barnes & Noble or bookstores. And if you want to learn more about Tawfik, you can go to his website. It's tawfikhamid.com. That's TAWFIKHAMID.com. That's www.tawfikhamid.com. So, a great, insightful work that you've done there, Tawfik, and thank you for doing it, because this is something that, we're kind of forgetting about. It's kind of what led up to the Benghazi massacres, which still have not been satisfactorily answered in this country. I mean, I think the administration is just happier than hell to let that get swept under the rug by the current nonsense. In Egypt, in the Mideast, Tell us about what you think the U.S. policy has been toward Egypt and the Mideast as a whole, and what it is today, or if it even is today.
The intention of the policy in general must be, and it has been for years, to serve the U.S. interests in the region. So they simply want to protect the Suez Canal, to keep the peace treaty with Israel, and to also take care of some economical investments in the country that are, in, as far as I know, in hundreds of billions of dollars. I'm talking here about private sector mainly. So these are the main interests, to keep the interests of the U.S. And generally speaking, the trend was to protect people like Mubarak regime and the military system that controls the country, with a form of pseudo style of democracy, not real democracy that exerted during Mubarak. But at the end, he was able to keep control, or to control the country, and deliver stability. That's very important for the U.S. in the area.
So let me just interject for a moment. You kind of tweaked my interest. So in addition to the United States promoting its national interest, are you also thinking that the United States is promoting the interests of certain multinational companies? And if so, who are they?
There are private investors in American investors in the country. I can't find I don't have in my mind now specific names, but I know the whole number of investments and its investment in different fields. And the U.S. government is getting benefit of that through taxes for these companies. It's like companies that invest in China or India. There are some investments there. But
and they're not only they're getting taxes, they're getting campaign contributions. Just out of curiosity, is General Electric or any of the multinational banks over there?
There are some banks there, like Bank of America, for example, is...
Bank of America, Obama's old friend. How about General Electric? Do they have some fingers in the pie in the Mideast?
I can't confirm this piece of information, but I'm sure there are several other companies who are investing in the area, and the stability of the country is important for them. And again, this is part of the whole thing. The whole thing is also the Suez Canal, and there are some people believe that there is a military base in the area that's more or less of a secretive manner called Ras Binas. And it's unknown if this is true or not, but there are many authors who said clearly this is in a certain area in Egypt, it's secretive, and there is a military base there. This is what you hear here and there. But let us come to the basics: the Suez Canal, the peace treaty with Israel, and maybe some economical interests as well. The whole issue was that supporting the military regime was doing fine until the system started to collapse, and the revolt against Mubarak was so powerful that no one could really prevent it. But the real mistake that happened was that after the collapse of Mubarak, the administration did not support any role for the military, and the military was the only body that is, you can call it to some extent an ally to the U.S. compared to the other ones. It's not like Israel is not a real or true ally, but at least it was pro-America, not like the Muslin Brotherhood and not like the liberal left group who were against America, and many of them are extremely against Israel and against America as well. So you have here a situation when a dictator like Mubarak collapsed, and after the collapse, this is where the problem happened. Myself and many others advise the administration to stand beside the military or behind it, and not behind the Muslim Brotherhood. And what happened? The Muslim Brotherhood managed to get some form of support or acceptance in the administration, and they managed to come to power. They did several mistakes since they came to power, and you can see two powers now here in Washington. Some is supportive of the Muslim Brotherhood, and some are against it. And the ultimate or the ultimate outcome of this power is probably a game of wait and see with the Brotherhood. The support for them was high at the beginning, and it started to decline now because of the terrible things that they have done. Like, for example, today, the White House had to criticize Mohammed Morsi, the president of Egypt, for the anti-Semitic remarks that he said in 2010 when he described the Jews as pigs and monkeys. And this is very normal for the Brotherhood. They just lie to everyone, and they can tell you that they want peace, and at the same time they have a completely different agenda. Their politics are...
Gee, that kind of sounds familiar. It kind of sounds like the administration we have here in the United States.
It's in politics in general. You may have some some people hiding their real beliefs. That can be understandable, but not to the degree of the Muslim Brotherhood, especially their intentions here, which I can talk with more confidence about their intentions in the case of the Muslim Brotherhood, that they are certainly against the West, against America, anti-Semitic, against human rights, against women's rights. So the supporting them is going to bring nothing to the U.S. but problems in the future. So
to step back for just a moment. So at the time that Obama was talking about a war on women, quote unquote, here in the United States, in reality, he was supporting the Muslim Brotherhood through Morsi in Egypt, who, through Sharia law and others, basically women have no rights. In fact, they have negative rights.
Absolutely. And that is the real schizophrenia that's happening, that you cannot really stand for principles here and go support a system that promotes the opposite of these principles. That is the problem. As a taxpayer, honestly, I am not ready to support the Muslim Brotherhood with a single cent, not even a single dollar, a single cent of my taxes.
Right, and right now we're sending them $1.5 billion a year.
And the what's more, the Congress is trying to interrupt this, but what happened is we sent them weapons recently to a government that's controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. Morsi is now the head of the military. So you are sending these weapons to a man who have such anti-Semitic views to describe.
Right, they were F-14 top of the line jets. And
absolutely.
Tanks,
so we, on one hand, you can't really have it like you have to have one standard here. You cannot have double standards in this game, because you can't support Israel, the true ally of America, or you see, on one hand, and support its fiercest enemy, the Muslim Brotherhood, on the other hand. And Morsi didn't also only stop at calling Jews pigs and monkeys, but he asked the Muslims and the Arabs to continue feed their children hatred to Israel. And it's just despicable. It's so disgusting when you listen to it and see the level of hatred. You need to question, how come we support such a government that's led by such person with our tax dollars?
Well, you know what? We're going to get, because I think that's a really interesting question, but I want to ask two kind of lead-ups to that, because I want to get your take on why we are doing what we are doing. Number one, okay, we know that he despises Israel, Jews, is anti-Semitic, wants to wipe the state of Israel off the face of the map, and as the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, he has those views. Yeah. And we know that the Muslim Brotherhood, because of either lack of leadership or because of promotion by the Obama administration, is now in control of Egypt, at least more so than the military is. So we know those things, and we know that the Muslim Brotherhood, because they believe in Sharia law, shall we say, makes women worse than dustpans. Yeah. And tell us a little bit. Let's take a look at the third leg of that. How does the Muslim Brotherhood feel about Christians?
The Muslim Brotherhood are intelligent enough not to declare all their wars at one time. So at some stage, like in this stage, they are weak and they need support from the international community. They need funds, they need money, investment. So they really didn't show they did not start war against the Christians. But I can say the real problem here, the individuals of the Muslim Brotherhood, many of them are not directly opposing the Christians, but the whole belief of the organization is to implement Sharia, and Sharia considers Christians as second-class citizens, and they already do not give them. They say that the Constitution have equal rights, but in reality, Christians do not have equal rights to Muslims to build churches, for example. So you deal here with another form of hypocrisy, that some people can can on the surface show that they are nice with the Christians, but in reality they are really at war with the Christians through two things: inequality and making them less equal or to Muslims by not allowing them to have the same rights as Muslims in building their churches. On one hand. Yeah.
And isn't it true? I mean, there's been a number of instances of Christians being killed, Christian churches being burned. People have heard about the Coptic Christians, and but the government may give a little lip service to, this is terrible, but they really don't. Have they done anything about it? Has anybody even been arrested?
No action. That's another mechanism to fight, to declare war on Christians, is just to give a lip service to say how you respect the Christians and the Copts, and at the same time do not do anything to stop the attacks that's happening against them, or to take serious actions against those who attack them. That's another way of attacking Christians. And the third mechanism here is that the Christians, most of them are liberals, and and they will suffer by the lack of freedoms that the Islamists are trying to impose on them. For example, just recently, some guy, an Islamist, and his group announced that they will force Christian women to wear the hijab against their will in Egypt.
And that's the veil. That's the veil.
Yes, the veil or the hijab. Yeah. Right. And we didn't hear a strong denouncement or any denouncement actually from the government or from the Muslim Brotherhood against this guy.
Or from the United States government.
Of course. So I'm not expecting the U.S. government to probably know every detail that's happening there immediately and respond, but at least I'm talking here about the Muslim Brotherhood themselves. They just give lip service to the West that they will care for the Christian minority, but in reality they are giving them a lot of suffering via their passive attitude and not taking actions against those who attack them or threaten them or deprive them from their freedoms. And in fact, in the Constitution itself, while it states that citizens are equal, but in reality they are not. The Baha'i community, for example, are not permitted to build any temple in the country, and the Copts are not permitted to have equality in rights in building churches as in the case of mosques with Muslims.
So where we're at in our conversation here is Obama allowed the Muslim Brotherhood to come to power and did not support the army. As usual, he led from behind. We'll talk about why in a moment. Now you have people, the United States strategy, both for its national security and for big multinational corporations which shell lots of dollars into campaigns, was one of stability up to the time Mubarak went away. And you now have in power somebody who hates America, hates the West, wants Sharia law, has a true war on women through Sharia law, hates the Jews, hates the Christians, and is all about spreading Sharia law and a Muslim caliphate. Is that an accurate summation?
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's an accurate summation, tell me why the United States, I think you don't give them enough credit. I think with the $1 trillion that we spend on defense, or the $800 billion we spend on defense, I have a feeling they probably knew what President Morsi said about the Jews in 2010. I think they know what the Muslim Brotherhood really thinks. I think they probably had enough intelligence to know about the background of the Muslim Brotherhood and the top people in that organization. I'm certain that our intelligence agencies have told them about the connection between Hamas and other terrorist groups and the Muslim Brotherhood, which we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. So in the face of all this knowledge, and in the face of those 5 or 6 facts which you and I just reviewed as a foundation for folks, why, in your opinion, would the United States government allow this to happen and continue feeding money to somebody who is an avowed enemy of ourselves, our beliefs, our values, our religions, our faith, and our allies?
I honestly see that there is a strong influence of the Muslim lobby here in Washington on and some of these decisions. Some of the advisors in the White House, for example, were wearing the hijab or the veil, and I see.
You're talking about the White House advisors are wearing the veil?
Yeah, yes, one of them, Dalia Mujahid, for example.
That are in the White House and getting paid by the American taxpayer?
She was an advisor in a religious issue for the White House for a long period of time. Or
wow.
At least this is how she presents herself everywhere. And I see there is some influence, and I actually wrote an op-ed in the Jerusalem Post about the possibility of infiltration of within the system and administration that influence the decisions. Because, for example, this what really worries me. I hope I am wrong on that, but this is really very worrying for me. That when I see, for example, the Obama administration cannot tolerate at all any undemocratic decision from the military of Egypt when they handled power after Mubarak. But when you see Morsi, for example, allowing thugs to surround the Supreme Court and to prevent the judges from issuing a declaration against him, and when you see him taking all the powers of the country in his own hands and controlling all powers, which is extremely anti-democratic principle, and you don't hear a single uttering of a word from the administration to denounce him for doing such thing, you start to question why you were so much against the military, and all of a sudden you say nothing against the Muslin Brotherhood or against Morsi when he did the even worse things in matters of democracy.
Well, part of the answer might be is that we have a president who seems to want to circumvent the Constitution, the Congress, the courts, and who's kind of in love with executive authority and executive orders himself. Witness Allah, as folks listen to this show, his executive orders on a whole wide range of things, from gun control to medical matters, just in the last week. So it's. How is he going to criticize his contemporary, Mr. Morsi, in Egypt when he's basically doing the same thing, albeit slightly tempered by 130 million armed Americans and Congress in the United States? I mean,
of the reason, but the outcome in both situations is disastrous, because the basic rules of democracy is to have a division of power and independence of powers within the country. Otherwise, it's not a democracy or a real democracy. So, and wherever this is happening, it's disaster.
Let me ask a question. Do you think? I mean, you're obviously highly expert know the culture of the Middle East. If you took the population of Egypt right now, taking into account Morsi's the Muslim Brotherhood's rise to power with the help of the Obama administration, the infiltration of the administration, we're going to talk more about that, by Muslim Brotherhood sympathizers and lobbyists, and Morsi's complete grab for power, over the last month or two, without a word from, the United States, the great civil rights, the social justice king, Mr. Obama. If you take all that into account, what percentage of the Egyptian population really supports what's going on, and what percentage of the Egyptian population is far more moderate and concerned about what's going on, just in your opinion?
Look, in my opinion, there were two stages. Stage one, or the first stage, was when the elections after the collapse of Mubarak happened, and at that time many people were optimistic about the Muslim Brotherhood. Some thought they are bringing economic prosperity to the country, and some wanted them because they thought they will implement strict Sharia rules. But what happened after the Muslim Brotherhood came to power, and this was seen in 70% support in the elections, okay? After some time, the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamists did terrible mistakes, and they failed economically, and their individuals did many negative things that were perceived in a very negative way by the population there. So you see a significant decline of the Muslim Brotherhood popularity. And I can say if you have a real free elections now, they will not get more than 25% or 20% of the real voting.
And part of that was Morsi, as he was coming to power and whipping up the 70% plurality that he got, he had this 100-day promise period, right? He was going to fix all the problems in the country in 100 days.
Yes, and he, of course, it was very naive of him to do so. And
well, no, he got elected. I don't think it was naive at all. It was
he got
it was deliciously it was deliciously and effectively devious, just like the administration in this country.
But again, their problem is Islam is the solution. And Islam is the solution was their slogan for years, and now people realize that it's not really an amazing solution. Islamists are just getting things worse. The US dollar has increased significantly compared to the pound, which will make everything more expensive for poor Egyptians, and things really are going to escalate in a very negative way against Morsi and the Brotherhood. And by the way, this is one of the best ways to defeat the Islamists in general, to change the Islam from the unmeasurable to the measurable. Let me just explain this point. Islam as a slogan, as principle, as a religion was something unmeasurable. They tell you as a Muslim in the Muslim world that when you die for jihad, for Allah, you will get 72 virgins in paradise. This is something you cannot measure really, okay? But when you make Islam in a political form, it become measurable. In other words, you can measure it. You can say, oh, you failed. It's like communism when you prove that they failed economically, for example. So now the Islamists are in trouble because in the past people used to look to them as a dream that they will bring solutions for all their problems. Now, on reality, when they became a political party, the statistical measures and the facts on ground will determine if their system is succeeding or not. So they actually changed the theory from just unmeasurable religious issues to a measurable political, economical factor, which can be really very destructive to radical Islam. I see on the social media a rising of many Muslims who are against the Islamists, who are demanding a reformation. So there is a movement, but the problem, they control politics, and at the end they can drag the whole country into a Somalia style of a Taliban or of Afghanistan style of life. So that is the real war that's happening now in the country.
Just out of curiosity, what is because this is such a hot topic here, and I don't think people really have a good feel for how important an armed population is in terms of making sure, without ever squeezing a trigger, making sure that people retain their rights and that the government behaves. What is the gun control situation in Egypt? Can the common guy get a gun?
No, you have to get permission from the military to have a gun, and it's possible, but it's not very easy. You need a lot of things to happen to be able to get a gun.
Just out of curiosity, what
didn't prevent? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, what percentage of the Egyptian population, legally or illegally, has access to a weapon?
When you count something like that, it's very hard in a country like Egypt. You don't have clear statistics, and also the illegal weapons are everywhere now. From the Libya, after the collapse of al-Qaddafi, the weapons from the NATO, many of them were smuggled to Egypt, and now some of them are in Sinai, and some reached Hamas. So you have a lot of illegal weapons now in the country.
Oh, so Mr. Obama and Mr. Holder and the rest of the anti-gun crew over here, never mind Fast and Furious in Mexico, in addition, their policies have led to a proliferation of weapons, American weapons, throughout the Mideast?
Unfortunately, their policies has caused a lot of troubles in the Middle East. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Gotcha.
Absolutely. There's no doubt.
You know, I mean, isn't that another unbelievable dichotomy between what he says here with a bunch of children around him at a press conference and what this guy actually does around the world, really affecting U.S. national security and the lives of hundreds of thousands of innocent people in other countries.
Absolutely. When you see Iran on one hand, for example, trying to get a nuclear weapon, and you see the Muslim Brotherhood is dreaming about creating the Islamic Caliphate and controlling the area, and when you know that the area has the Suez Canal where a lot of trade goes through it, and if the Suez Canal is interrupted, the oil prices here in America will be affected. And in
Tawfik, just for a moment, because many people are geographically challenged. They don't spend the time on this stuff like you and I do, or like you do, particularly in the Mideast. So the Suez Canal, just very briefly, explain where it runs from, where it runs to, who kind of borders it, and what kind of trade it carries, and why it's so important.
I'll tell you briefly. The Suez Canal connects the Red Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. The Red Sea is coming from south, and the Mediterranean Sea that's separating the Middle East from Europe, for example. This is very crucial to have a connection there, because all the oil that goes, or most of it from the Gulf area to Europe, and part of it goes to the U.S. after that, goes from the ocean to the Red Sea and goes up north until it reaches the Suez Canal. It passes through the Suez Canal, it reaches the Mediterranean Sea, then it goes to Europe, and from Europe it's used locally, and part of it goes to the United States. So what will happen if the Suez Canal is interrupted? You interrupt the oil flow that comes from the Gulf area through the Red Sea up to the Mediterranean and to Europe and to America. This interruption can significantly increase oil prices immediately. If it happened. That's what's the importance of the Suez Canal here, is that it can affect our economy here if troubles occurred over there.
And also the new governments, which are gaining, fortunately, new democratic governments, new constitutions, which are gaining a foothold in some of the African countries like Kenya and Uganda and Somalia even. Folks are going to be I have a show coming up on what's happening in those African countries. You folks are going to be really surprised. You're not hearing this on the press, but this is from somebody who's a scholar in that area and was actually there a month ago, and it really fascinating. But the trade from those countries, which is so critical to their economic stability and the birth of these fledgling democracies, which is stabilizing that sector of the world, that flows primarily up through the Suez Canal to Europe. Is that correct, Tawfik?
Maybe a small part of it can go through Suez Canal, because through the land you can reach the Mediterranean Sea. If you are in Kenya or Tanzania, you don't need really the Suez Canal for this kind of trade, because it can reach via trains, via cars. Maybe a small part goes through the Suez Canal.
But all those countries that border the Red Sea to the south, I mean, their primary outlet, if they're going to sell their goods to Europe or to the United States, is going to be up through the Suez.
Absolutely.
Right.
This is correct. Right. And I would like to add one important piece of information,
sure,
just to be fair and accurate, that the U.S. accepted the Brotherhood, and to some extent, many see it as a form of support. When they pressured the military, they supported the coming of the Muslim Brotherhood to control the country. But I do not want to make the Egyptian people themselves, who went to the election ballot and who refused who supported the Brotherhood, I also want to make them sharing in the responsibility of having the Brotherhood now in power. But many of these Egyptians regret what they did. But
right, that's exactly why.
Yes.
That's exactly why I asked you the question, what is the support today? Put aside the fact they bought. Listen, in this country, 50% of the people bought off on the lies and elected people, right? So obviously, if it can happen in the United States, it can happen in Egypt. But that was why I was asking the question about how many would support the MB, the Muslim Brotherhood, and Morsi today. And that 25% number, I think, is very indicative. Unfortunately, you have a population that has been disarmed, so there's not a lot they can do about it, is there?
They can't do much, especially the military. The real problem we have is that the liberals or the anti-Muslim Brotherhood groups in general are extremely anti-military. So the military is in a difficult situation. They have a good offer from the Brotherhood to remain in power, to have a lot of privileges, while the liberals are not ready to give the military the same level of privileges. So now you have two powers, the Brotherhood plus the military, against the rest of the population. It can go like this for a while until the liberals start, or the anti-Islamist groups start to unite and also start to offer a better deal to the military, because the military here is pivotal in controlling or shaping the future of the country. You have three powers: the military, the Islamists, and the anti-Islamists. And you need two of these powers together to control the country. So, of course, the Islamists cannot unite with the anti-Islamists. It's impossible. So, the reality is the military will be the really winning power here. If it goes with the Islamists, they control the country. If it goes with the anti-Islamists, the country can become secular. So, if the secular groups in Egypt are very emotional, divided, and they are not ready to give privilege to the military. So they practically forced the military to play the game with the Brotherhood.
So the bottom line is, depending upon who the military sides with, decides the politics and policies of Egypt, which in turn affects the stability of the Mideast, the price of oil that everybody who's listening to this show is going to pay at the gas pump, and possibly our national security on a whole bunch of levels, including the transportation of whatever type of nuclear weapon Iran is able to develop, and the stability and even existence of the Israeli state.
Yes.
So folks, here's the bottom line. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Not only what's happening in this country, but what's happening across the sea, which we, shall we say, are easily diverted from by the shenanigans in Washington over some domestic issues, which shouldn't even be issues, but that's a whole nother show. Tawfik, let me ask a question.
Yeah.
Do you think, and this is a tough question for you, do you think Muslims as a whole, or is there a percentage of Muslims which are actually immoral? I mean, I really can't find another word, but, there was a recent incident where supposed Israeli sympathizers were killed, their bodies were dragged through the streets behind motorcycles, people cheered. The United States government, of course, said, not a friggin' word, not one word. But where was the hue and cry in the Muslim countries? Or are the moderate Muslims, if they're in the majority, and I'd like to have your opinion on that, are they just too scared to speak up?
No, not too scared. The situation was that they were really following the Islamists blindly and completely surrendering their brains and minds to these Islamists for years. I'm talking here about decades of surrendering the minds completely to the Islamists. After after the social media started to develop, and after the Islamists are becoming exposed with the negative things they did in the country, some of them are immoral things with girls and with accepting pedophilia. You can see many in the Middle East, especially here in Egypt, are starting to have what I can call a wake-up phenomena. You see some of them are coming now again as the Islamists, as I mentioned. So I see the lack of the cry was basically because the complete surrender of the mind to the Islamists, because the others or the letters use the religion effectively to control their mind. And it was actually acceptance of this evil. So I cannot say it's because of they were scared. No, they were not in most circumstances. You listen to many Muslims in their private talks during the attacks, for example, on a school bus on Israel, and you can tell that the majority are extremely anti-Semitic, and they justify these acts. And they don't say a word against stoning because they think it's part of their religion, which they believe in strongly. So it was actually a belief in that and acceptance. But as a matter of honesty, there is some beginning of change. I'm not saying it's really very significant yet, but it is a serious, powerful change that's happening against the Islamists. And let us see how things will go, because it can go both ways, actually. Egypt, a country like Egypt can go, and the Middle East can go to become more Islamized, and goes in the direction of Taliban, or the seculars and the anti-Islamist groups may win, which is a relatively small possibility. But this is how I can see it. It's not a matter of fear, absolutely not, because in the private talks, and they had many opportunities to criticize this, and they didn't. You haven't seen many demonstrations against bin Laden or against the terrorists. You have not heard many scholars speaking against the stoning of women to death. So all of this was a matter of acceptance. This is what is taught in the religion. When I personally start to fight these radical views and teaching, the majority in the community stood against me. So when I was trying to preach something different, so it's not a fear factor. It's actually a real belief in these things. Things are hopefully starting to change a bit, but I hope it's not too late.
And drinking the Kool-Aid of the rosy promises, much like the progressives do in this country.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost the point.
I said, and drinking the Kool-Aid of the promises, as much as the progressives do in this country.
Yeah, people follow sometimes some views and opinions blindly, and they become brainwashed after some time with these views. But reality at the end, concrete reality, can wake them up. You see, so you can follow progressive views and for a time until you really realize that
until they come knocking on your door for your gun, your health insurance premiums double, and you pay $5,000 more in taxes, and then suddenly the reality meets, the rubber meets the road. Reality meets the quote unquote religion.
Absolutely. When you face the concrete reality, you can't ignore it. You can't ignore that there is a wall in front of you, because you can run against it, your head will be broken. Simple.
Exactly.
So it's concrete reality will teach them the lesson. If they didn't listen to people who sees the problem better than them, then concrete reality is the best teaching sometimes.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. That's why when we came to this fiscal cliff, and I'm advocating again on this debt reduction and debt limit, deal that's kind of boiling in Washington right now, and that is, hey, stop the spending, shut down the government, and be done with it. I mean,
I'll tell you my vision about this fiscal cliff and this loan, this problem of the U.S. loan. And I'm writing now an op-ed. The concept of it is that we in the U.S. do not hear the word efficiency as much as we hear the word amount of dollars, for example, or funds.
Right.
We have a major problem, not in the amount of money that we have, but in how to spend this money effectively.
Yes, and how it's used. Correct.
Absolutely. You can have a chess player who can win you with only 5 or 6 pieces, and you have all the pieces simply because he knows how to use his pieces effectively. And I'm talking here about my field, for example, radical Islam. I can tell you honestly, the amount ineffectively in this field, we are talking here in more than $1 trillion maybe. So like going into war without... Hello?
Yes, I'm here, you bet.
Going into war without considering the psychological and culture and ideological component of the war effectively can make you, just like in Afghanistan. We went for years, we lost a lot of money and a lot of soldiers, and at the end, in a couple of years, the army will be returning back, and Taliban will be controlling Afghanistan again.
Absolutely.
Most people. So you have a real problem here with this. Sometimes the type type of research that's being done with wrong analysis for the data at the end because you don't have sufficient or efficient evaluators for the material. So we have a real problem in using our money effectively, and I'm one of the believers that if we started to think in terms of efficiency or efficacy, or rather than just limiting our minds to the word amount or numbers, then we can be on the right track. Because
I think that's an excellent suggestion. We could start hitting both the amount and the efficiency by stopping $1.5 billion to Egypt every year, which brings us back to Egypt. I have two questions left for you. Number one, would you tie in for people, because I think it's very important, and we have about 7 minutes left, okay? Yeah. And there's two questions that I want to get out to you here at the end of the show. Number one. Yeah. This is a really dark, sinister side of the Muslim Brotherhood that I don't think most people get. Would you tie them into the other terrorist organizations over there so that people understand how the chessboard works, if you will? And then I'm going to wind up the interview with what you think. I got a glimpse of it just a few minutes ago when you said, it's a remote possibility that the anti-Islamists will win. What is I want to get your best take as an expert on this, as to where you think this is all going. What is the most likely? Never mind what we'd like to see happen. What is the most likely result?
What's the most likely? Okay.
So number one, tell the folks a little bit about the Muslim Brotherhood, this benign outfit that we were told is all peace, love, dove. Tell us about their real background and who they're linked to in terms of terrorist organizations.
The Muslim Brotherhood started in 1928 with the aim of restoring the Islamic Caliphate. And they had since then a very strong anti-modernity and anti-West agenda. Their main intention is to bring back the caliphate, and I think their first priority is to destroy the state Israel, erase it from the map. Their hatred to the Jews in Israel is unbelievable. Their hatred for the Western civilization is also huge, especially when it comes to women's rights and the human rights. A Hamas organization that's defined as a terrorist group, and it is a terrorist group that kills children and intentionally in Israel, and celebrate killing Jewish children when they do that. It's part of the Muslim Brotherhood group, and it's considered a military component of it. Like you see, for example, the head of Hamas organization giving the oath to the Muslim Brotherhood as part of it. And you can notice when the Brotherhood came to power, they invited the leaders of Hamas organization to sit with the top officials in the government. They invited some of them to speak in the Al-Azhar Mosque, and you can feel it in the tone and the attitude of the Muslim Brotherhood that's very supportive to Hamas organization. So
on one hand, the Muslim Brotherhood, their military arm, their terrorist arm, the arm they founded, the arm they financed, the arm that they coddle, and that they use for military and anti-Semitic Israeli, terrorist purposes, is Hamas, just as Iran uses Hezbollah.
Yes, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Hamas is maybe the relationship is a bit different, but it's in the same direction.
Gotcha.
So what I can see here is there is a form of schizophrenic decisions here when you consider Hamas as a terrorist group, and it is a terrorist group, and at the same time go support the Brotherhood and call it moderate group. Then you really are missing the whole thing, because the Brotherhood is just like the face of the Islamists that can deal with the West and can use the words that the Westerners would love to hear. Like, for example, we will implement democracy. Of course, when the ballot will bring, when your understanding of democracy is only the ballot, and when the ballot is going to bring Islamists, but when the ballot is going to bring something else, you can see completely the opposite face. So the Brotherhood is just the nice face of the Islamists, and Bin Laden is the ugly face, but all of them really play are in the same direction. That's why you don't hear any serious criticism to bin Laden or see it on the website in Arabic of the Muslim Brotherhood. You don't hear it. You see a difference between what they say to the West and what they say in Arabic on their website.
And what their goals are. I mean, it's kind of like Van Jones and his whole outfit over here, including the administration. Drop the radical pose to achieve the radical end.
Yes, and their attitude simply is a parasitic attitude. They are more than happy to use you and utilize your nutrition to get aid and fund and support, financial support. Until they become more powerful, then you will start to see the real face. So they always work it that way. This is their way of thinking, that they are ready to deal with even Satan, to use it until they become strong enough to do the next step. So I think it would be very myopic way of thinking if the U.S. administration thought for a moment that on the long term dealing with this group or supporting them will be beneficial to the U.S. It certainly will be harmful to the U.S. interests, and only on the short run they may have some nice relations or pseudo-nice relations, but on the long run the relationship will bring nothing but problems to the U.S.
Kind of like using Morsi to do this so-called truce a month or so ago between the Palestinians and Israel.
Look, if you want to see this truce, give me just 1 minute here. There is a movie that Morsi really imitated exactly here. The idea was that someone can go, this is how it goes, to tell Hamas, for example, to attack Israel and tell them, don't listen to anyone who wants you to stop and only listen to me. So what happened, many tried to intervene and Hamas refused to stop attacking Israel until Morsi came and they listened to him. So he became like a hero in front of everybody. But when you know that Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Brotherhood could have prevented them to begin with from attacking Israel, then you start to question, was this whole issue orchestrated between them so that Morsi can get some international recognition to tell Hamas, go attack Israel, don't listen to anyone except me. When I come in the picture, listen to me so I look great in front of the West and the Western world.
Yeah, it's kind of like create a crisis that could have been avoided, and then use the crisis to further your own ends, just as the administration here does.
The same tactic, I have seen it in movies in Egypt. So it actually seems to be affected by some of these ideas. All right. So the last question you mentioned was how I see things are going without any... I'm pessimistic about how things will go. I'm on one hand happy that Islamists ideologically are starting to become exposed. Many people are turning against them. But the whole situation of a struggle here is like two people struggling in a ship, and you see the ship is sinking in the ocean. So I see this struggle is hard to reconcile between the opposing groups because they are two poles away from one another, the Islamists and anti-Islamists, and the struggle can continue in a manner that can end the economy of the country. And once this happened, you will start to see other forms of criminal activities and problems that can bring the whole country into a very negative cascade. So I am pessimistic, but I still have some hope.
You're pessimistic by nature. You're pessimistic by hope. You're pessimistic, but with hope. But let's go one step further. So let's say your pessimistic viewpoint, unfortunately, becomes the reality. And, Egypt kind of descends into Sharia, descends into even further tumult.
Yes.
Along with it, because Egypt has been kind of the cornerstone of Mideast peace, the Mideast further deteriorates, if that's even possible. Yes. What is the end effect to the American people and to the United States? You got about a minute to wrap up here.
what will happen in Egypt will affect the rest of the Middle East some way or another, or at least the North African nations. And in Syria, for example, the Islamists can control the area as well. What I'm expecting, if this happened, which is likely to happen, if you are realistic, it's where the direction is now. I'm expecting a major war in the Middle East. And in this war in the area, certainly the Suez Canal can be seriously affected, the transport by the canal, and the U.S. is better to probably think in alternatives to it from now. This is what I can advise the administration here, is to put this possibility seriously, to have a plan B if Suez Canal is interrupted, and also to support Israel to the highest level, because Israel military superiority, I believe, is the only thing that can maintain peace or the peace treaty, because the moment Israel is the gap between the Arabs and Israel is lessened militarily speaking, the Arabs will try to attack Israel with serious weapons, and the Iranians can develop nuclear bombs. So we can have disasters there in this area if we are not wise enough to prevent these disasters from happening at this critical stage of human history.
All right. Well, this has been fascinating, and I really appreciate your time. Once again, folks, we've been talking with Dr. Tawfik Hamid. He's an expert on the Middle East. He has a great book out, and you can get it on Amazon. The bottom line of the book is about what we were talking about today. I mean, this kind of whole movement toward Islamism, extremist Islamism, and what it means for the Western world. And I really, really, really suggest that you get it. And you can go to his website, and it's I had it right here. Here, help me out a little bit, Tawfik. Give the folks your website.
TawfikHamid.com, TawfikHamid.com.
Yes, and they can also find out about the book there and where to get it, correct?
Inside Jihad, it's available on Amazon.com.
All right, that's terrific. Tawfik, I'm going to have you back on because I think in a month or two we're going to start seeing more about, or maybe 2 or 3 months, more about how this Mideast mess is going to play out, and I want to get your take on it.
Absolutely. You are welcome anytime. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Folks, this is Reid Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio, KGAB, AM 650 Cheyenne and the Town Square Network, serving the Intermountain West, Nebraska, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, and northern Colorado, and KFEZ FM, serving southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. I hope you've enjoyed today's interview, and I hope it makes you think about, shall we say, the global perspective, not just the domestic things which are boiling over here, which distracts your attention, because it all affects you, your children, your kids, today and tomorrow. Tawfik, thank you. Have a great week.
A pleasure. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
For more information about Reid and his work, please go to ontherightsideradio.com. There you can also click to purchase the first 2 volumes of his #1 best-selling historical Western series, Threads West, An American Saga, and Maps of Fate. And now the first volume of his new nonfiction series, Land for Love and Money, is available everywhere, or go to landforloveandmoney.com. That's Land for Love and Money. We'd also like to remind you that if you've missed any shows, you can go to the show archives on Reid's ontherightsideradio.com webpage. We look forward to seeing you again next week for another episode of Reid Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.